Okay, this is Stephen. I've got a family
welcome
thing,
everybody.
and I'm turning it over to Joe. So I'll see you later.
Well, welcome everybody to the Bucky Call. Welcome, Richard. Steve is at a family function, but he will be joining us a little bit later. It's March 15th, and I think we get the times mixed up a little bit. We were supposed to start about an hour ago, but obviously, with our spring forward, um, we got the times mixed up a little bit. So we're actually starting at our usual time. With that, Richard, how are you feeling? What would you like to take away from today?
Well, overall, yes, I'm feeling good. I had a good trim tab meeting this morning, and we wound up our discussions on education automation, which was the long talk that Fuller gave at Carbondale in early 1961 or two, which of course right now builds on the big event that's coming up at the end of the month in the Carbondale, Edwardsville area. We're going to highlight the Buckminster Fuller developments in the early days, and D.W. Jacobs was on today talking about a number of the items. There's going to be another one-man or one-actor play, which is the playwright on this one is actually I think a nephew by marriage or an actual nephew of DW's.
Okay.
And so that was kind of fun hearing about that. There's a number of people from the Trim Tab group that are going to be there in person until they're going to, in most cases, I suppose, meet each other for the first time, which will be quite an event in itself.
No, it won't be.
Yeah, so that's been good, and I'm currently working with a number of people on storytelling, getting the voice of people who have had suicide experiences out into the open and developed and told in a safe and important kind of message way to get their story across and get their expertise acknowledged and invited into the bigger sort of table of addressing suicide issues. And it was an interesting morning too, because we skirted around and dealt directly with the current sort of political issues in several countries, including the U.S., of course. And it was done in the context of a talk or a paper that Fuller gave in the early 60s. And for some reason, which kind of spooks people a little bit today, is that he was talking about what it would be like in 2025. And he also prefaced his remarks sort of on the notation that if we could get to 85 in the way in which he thought we should get to, then we'll be fine. But I don't think we got there. And so here we are in 225, and he had this sort of prophecy way back in the 60s about what 2025 would be like. And I don't think it's what he had hoped it would be like. So that's how I'm feeling. It's always good to get out of the actual heat of the uh, political, I guess one could call it diatribe, as opposed to a political sort of dialogue.
Mm.
And it was also interesting. One of the members um, was really speaking about what he thought was uh, the problem of if you want, a two-party system, and a two-party system that are both fraught with lots of, if you want, deep-seated issues and problems.
Mm.
And I found that kind of interesting in the sense that in an ideal way, we could have a two-party system um, that is um, committed, if you want, to the notion of the bipartisanship, the notion of the dialogue between the opposites, so to speak, in order to surface something that would be beneficial for the third party. And the third party, of course, is the notion of the people. Um, and so the binary of two gets turned into a triangle or a trinary, and and again, you've got the dialogue between the two with a bipartisan purpose, if you want, tied to it, and you have the recipient of that dialogue in the people, and then in the reverse, you can have the people giving their input into the respective parts of the binary, um, and um, and the binary partner or parties, and pick that up and try and dialogue it into something that'll work for everybody and feed it back to the people. So you get this um, triangular kind of leaning out towards the people, and then it gets flipped or turned, so that it then becomes the people feeding into the binary,
Mm.
or the two-party system. So that's kind of where I'm at, and it's really interesting that this, what I think was a much better articulation right now than I was feeling this morning. It's kind of bubbled, I guess, throughout the day into giving you the answer I just gave you about how I'm feeling today or tonight. So there we are. And how are you feeling? Have we got Steve back now? Um,
He's in the car.
okay. So I guess it's back to you for the.
I'm in the car and I'm doing what I can to load this into my hands-free driving. So we'll see if I can get it up there.
Okay. Well, anyway, that allows it to go over to you, Joe.
Yeah, no, I'm feeling a little bit tired. I didn't sleep well last night. Um, and have quite a bit going on. So some, kind of challenging decisions. It's interesting what you just said actually about, the two-party system is, because I was kind of thinking about that in terms, it's a kind of that top-down, bottom-up approach.
Yeah.
And so where they kind of work in unison with one another. And yeah, I mean, if the system could work like that, it would be ideal. And right now we're not doing that. So but I think Bucky's work provides a framework to enable that. And I think if you looked at even
This thing says it's on the
our
clock.
our discussion last week,
It's not.
um, with kind of just looking at things with a twist, so to speak,
Yeah.
and how that actually factored into seeing things from two different perspectives. And so, I mean, I think Bucky actually provides us with a set of patterns that we can actually look to for harmony. And I think actually Amy's book really makes that accessible. As accessible as a complex topic can be. So yeah, I mean, I'm just looking to build off of last week, and push forward.
Yeah, actually, what's happened in the few minutes that we're actually dialoguing, and I created the image of a triangle made up of the two-party system and the people, and the idea that the dialogue will emerge a solution that's beneficial to all. And I just drew out the triangle right now and labeled it with those three. And then all of a sudden I'm looking at the bipartisan solution. And in order to graphically depict that, I put a dot in the middle of the triangle and then connected all of them. And all of a sudden there's the basic tetrahedron. And you get for me, it was the idea then the bipartisan parties feed into each other to come up with a bipartisan solution that then goes out to the people. And in reverse, it could be that the people then feed in their respective ideas, but they feed it into kind of a bipartisan hopper. And then it gets channeled out to the respective party people, and they digest it, if you want, from their perspectives, and then they bring it together into the dialogue to come up with a bipartisan, if you want, dialogue solution that then goes back out to the people. And so again, you get this idea of the tetrahedron kind of working in either that top-down idea that you're just talking about, or it's an in-out kind of way. But you get the dynamic of the tetrahedron with, in this case, with the labels of the people who are going to be involved in that basic format, and it happens to be the people who are advocates of a particular party line, and same with the other party line, but they have that fundamental value that says that even if we're disparate, we're coming together to come up with something that's for the common good. And so again, you've got a simple a simplex model to, in fact, address very complex sort of issues and concerns within a community or society.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that that's actually well said. I mean, I think ideally, that's where you're dealing with issues, and not parties per se, and that's kind of what you're
Yeah.
speaking to. And so I think that that's really important. Yeah, when you speak to issues and not, as you said, the common good. So you could have two groups, but they're not. They're not looking at things from a very narrow perspective. Anne, welcome. How are you
Hello, hello.
there?
Sorry about that.
So you're right on time.
Yeah, right.
Actually,
Yeah.
I think Richard and I, we were 1 hour early, right?
Yeah, I think you were right, Anne. Actually, I think it was us that were.
Oh, no, it's okay. I was coming up, and then my husband pulled his muscles. I think shifting the dog cage, the kennel. Yeah, just downstairs helping him out a bit. Okay. Yes, I'm feeling great that I can be here for today's meet, because I'm heading out for an event afterwards. But I'm be able to spend I think about up to another hour. Yeah, so I'm very happy to be here. So, and let's see what we get out of today. So Richard, have you gone?
Yes. I was just saying that. Well, it started off with Joe and I together because Steve was kind of wrapping up a family do, and I was feeling good because of a discussion that we had in the Trimtam group this morning, and we were dealing with. We've been reading Bucky's Education Automation, so it really had everything to do with what the educational system needs to be doing and how is it doing it, and of course, um, it really got into that kind of issue that's so important to you in terms of how does an adult sort of teacher facilitator work with young kids, and in a way that um, that the children are actively engaged, and that the children um, are not only experiencing the idea that they're there to have their vessel filled up, but they're there to actively participate in their own learning and their own development. So a lot of the discussion this morning, I had my ear really tuned into you in terms of sort of, in some ways, wanting them to. It was almost like I wanted to channel you and sort of say, please come in and talk about the kind of future of education in the way in which I think Bucky would value, and in the way in which a lot of bureaucratic educational systems are blocking, I guess. And yeah, so that was, and we were just talking about this whole idea of a two-party system, because one of the people this morning was saying that he was even though he was on the side of a particular party, he was very concerned that both parties are not very palatable, or not very don't offer really good choices for people to choose. And so I was creating in my mind the whole idea of a two-party system should be able to work if it's working in a dialogical way to come up with a solution that works for everybody, and then it goes back out to the people. And so I created in my mind the two-party system, and then I added the people. So I got a triangle. And then as I was thinking about the solution that the bipartisan people would create together, I put a dot in the middle of the triangle to say that would be the solution, which gets fed to the people. And all of a sudden, I had a basic tetrahedron picture in my on my piece of paper. And then the reverse would happen is that people would feed their ideas in for a solution, and then they would get separated out and sent over to the two parties to sort of give their particular perspectives. Then they would come together and dialogue in a Bohemian way, a solution that emerges out of their debate, not one side or the other. And then it goes back to the people. And so you got a triangle that's in a sense going out to the people, and then it turns back and you have the people feeding back into the other parts of the triangle. So anyway, it was a brilliant 5 minutes for me. And as I said to Joe, I was actually digesting everything that was being discussed this morning, I guess through the day, that I was able to articulate what I just did both to him and to you now. So
No,
I'm feeling pretty high.
good.
Has
Yeah.
Steve gone yet? Because
No.
after Steve, I've got a few comments to add to what you're saying, Richard. Yeah.
Yeah, as do I. But let's
Go ahead and comment on what Richard's saying. I'm trying to get rigged here, so go ahead and go.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because you know, just now you're talking about the two-party thing, yeah, in your country, right? Political party. I read a book on the Gen Zs, you know, and what came out was that for the Gen Zs, they're not interested in voting anymore because and it's a book from America anyway, and they said that I think in UK also they have similar issues because they're also very two-party, you know, the governance of the country, right? So the Gen Zs are struggling, or actually they're not even bothering to struggle, because as exactly you said, two parties, the choices given to them not palatable, they're choosing not to vote, which in itself is a problem, right? But that is the direction they're going down, and it's actually written about because they just looked at the choices, they didn't want the choices. Okay. In our country also, we had issues with you know, the younger ones coming out. They're choosing like a lot of the opposition more because they felt that the other party before just did not take care of their interests. You know, children do grow up. Yeah.
Mhm.
And if you've done nothing to take care of their interests as students in schools, and, you know, to provide them with the right sort of education for them to make a good living when they come out with all the right tools, they're not going to vote for you. You know, and I don't think a lot of political parties are thinking from that perspective when they're dealing with, you know, with the younger ones. And now it's showing up. The Gen Zs are showing up very different from, and because they have access to the social media, that's where they vote. Inverted commas, you know. Yeah, so that's something that I wanted to add. And but the education one, you'd be you'd be interested to know. Actually, after this, I'm heading down to one of the bigger shopping malls because there's a convention for the early childhood education, right? So I've got half an hour to speak. And the thing I'm speaking about is, I think I've mentioned it to you, there's a 7-year-old who had a TED talk called, remember Molly Wright? Yeah, so I'm going to be speaking on serve and return, because that is what gets kids engaged. You know, we didn't know that was exactly what we were doing all along. And all the way up, and it works all the way up to 18 years old. But serve and return interactions, they talk about it with children, about children, you know, little toddlers and babies and all that, how they engage. And it's very, very visible, as you saw watch the video, right? But it works all the way up to 18 years old. And when we saw it, we said, oh my God, this is what we've been doing. We didn't shut the kids down. We were engaging with them, even if they tried to be funny. But our interactions did not shut them down. And it kind of guided them to, not be disruptive because they were engaged in class, right? And after trying to be funny, we actually play along with them generally, and without shutting them down. And so today I'll be focusing on that serve and return. And a lot of people are not aware that the studies are from Harvard University, things like that. Because they know Harvard, they may not know another university, but around the world, I think top universities are looking at that as well. So that's the other thing. And the last one is on the education side. I'll happily pass on if you all need any messages sent. I'm having a call with Kelly Ritchie. Kelly on Monday, yeah. Because sometime last year, towards the end of the year, he called me up and very concerned by what is going on in our school. You see, because my children are also in touch with him, and more because we were at the point where we are looking at, because education has two big issues. One is that it is too old. The other, it is not equal, right? So a lot of people are working on the not equal side, throwing a lot of money there to help. But there is the other part where it's too old and it's no longer serving, like anybody hiring, and know that the people today, the young ones coming out, they're really, really falling short of the requirements that are needed, because the education of old is training people to be local, but today's world, you need to deal at international level. So in many ways, that was my struggle with the past number of years, because even financially, how we did our finances, it was by people who thought they knew what they were doing, but it was written in such a way that made it difficult for us to get financing, or even investments, So last year we were supposed to hit on that direction, because we've been funding the change into the future on our own. So this is the job of the government. It's supposed to be financed by them, but they're not getting anywhere near there. And so a bunch of teachers are the ones doing that. So Kelly called in because he found out from my daughter that we were struggling with some of these issues. So I'm calling him on Monday just to reassure him that we are back on track, finally. And what is going on with it. And the big thing is that we are working towards getting kids ready for 2045. And when we're working towards education in the future, we were back then in 2009, we were like talking 10 years, 15 years ahead, because that's where the primary one kids would be graduating in 2024. And that came last year. So we relooked at the whole thing. We just dawned on us, that's 15 years, exactly where we were working towards. And now we can't use what we did in the past 15 years for that 20 years ahead. It's got to change. But luckily, because we've been working on this, we now have got the solution for when education goes, like, you no longer need the teachers. It's coming, but you need the teachers in a different way. So I'm talking about teachers to teach content, that's no longer needed. And I heard that it's going to happen by end of this year. But now, what is happening around the world, I'm getting it from all sides, coming at us that, it's happening here over in China, it's happening in another country. And then we found out Sweden has stopped, has made some decisions as to how education is supposed to work. So countries are reacting right now, but teachers in the classes are also reacting. And some amazing things have come out. And so we're like, and so it's going to happen a lot sooner than anybody anticipated, but we have it ready, because teachers have to go into facilitation, no longer about knowledge acquisition. And if they're trained the way they were before, it's going to be very tough for the teachers to flip over to that minute. The minute it arrives, and it is starting to show up. So anyway, that is a little bit to update you on, to where the direction is.
No, I mean, one, actually tell, Kelly, please, send my regards. You know, I always remember him. Actually, we had a storm here. I mean, I remember for a lot of reasons, but one time in particular, we had a storm in Philadelphia, and I mean, he's obviously in Australia, and um, and it was, there was some flooding in the city, and he immediately reached out, and that was meaningful. So, you keep him in mind. But I think what you were saying, Anne, is it's a very important, obviously, topic, because a lot of people feel like schooling has failed them, and that looks like Anne's frozen. But yeah, a lot of people have felt like schooling has failed them, and when they come out, as you'd mentioned, the opportunities aren't necessarily there. So they're frustrated with the system, and they're losing faith in the institutions that govern us. So education is due for an upheaval. And it's interesting because I think, and I'd be interested in getting your opinion on this, is I think that actually a lot why Bucky actually would be very helpful in today's world, in particular, is he's dealing with, and we talked a little bit about this last week, conceptual ideas and visual ideas, in a way of finding patterns in things, and that type of thinking is, you're thinking critically, and you're making connections between ideas, and you're not necessarily stuck in thinking in well, in the current model. So kind of, you're changing people's perspective, and right now you kind of see it, as you even started with talking about how young people aren't necessarily voting. They're not engaged. They have to change their perspective in order to become engaged. They have to look at the world differently. And that's, again, I think that the example of the discussions that we've had here and on Wednesdays, and even examples that Richard just used when he was talking about dialogue. These are different ways of thinking about things, and I think that actually, I think that that's the way education is going to be headed, is kind of as a way of having frameworks to think about things and applying frameworks, as opposed to looking at things in a very narrow, specialized way. And so when you can apply a framework, you can kind of dissect any problem, and you can start to make, start to, again, see the patterns that are emerging, as opposed just only looking from the world a narrow perspective, and a specialization perspective. And that, it's something my friend CJ had really tried to address, a comprehensivist approach. And so yeah, no, I mean, and I think that that's, again, you're less likely to look at the educational system as something that is failing you, but rather something that is helping you create something new. And then you become engaged. No, it's important. It's very important. And I think what Richard was saying a moment ago about the idea of how we were talking about the top down, bottom up approach to governance. When you don't look at things from a narrow perspective and only look at it from, as what Richard was talking about, like the way two parties are looking at it now, as opposition to one another, and in a very narrow way, they actually start to look at things holistically. And they look at issues, not necessarily, a specialized dogmatic way, if you will. And if they look at issues, then something better emerges. And ultimately the voice of the people are heard a little bit more in the way Richard was articulating it. And I think that's what I think that's what Bucky was doing, is creating a new system and thinking as a, is creating something better. So anyway, I think that all of this is what kind of is the reason why we study Bucky to begin with. And I'm excited you're going to be talking to Kelly.
Yeah.
Well, when you bring greetings to Kelly, you can bring greetings from his hometown Calgary through me.
I did not know that, actually. He was from, oh wow, okay.
Yeah.
But
So,
Steve,
is
go
Steve
ahead.
ready?
Steve, are you ready to actually chime in with your check-in?
I think you can hear me now. Can you hear me?
You
Yes.
can.
Okay, good. Well, I have had a family event. And boy, this daylight savings time thing has really got me screwed up, because I don't know if I'm falling backwards or falling forwards. And I don't know if when I set my clock back, if I set my phone call forward, I have no idea what's going on, and so I've really got to do some work with GMT and see what the heck's going on. But my family thing tonight, I have a daughter who owns a ballet company. She's started out just as a teacher, and she graduated from the University of Utah in dance, and she almost danced in Ballet West, but she did dance in Berkshire Ballet, which is New York Ballet, for a while, then came back and started teaching, and now she's been teaching for 25 years. This was her 25th year anniversary, and she has kids from age 4 to 30 who now come to dance at her studio. And that's been really, and then I needed to start this call, so I'm kind of torn between a bunch of things. I'm sure excited about the perspectives I get in this call, and I'm very excited about some of the things that Amy teaches, and sometimes I'm confused, but I think between the Wednesday call and this call, I'm getting some good perspectives and have some great insights on the shape of the geometry of the universe. And my son-in-law asked me tonight, he said, "What's this call about?" And I kind of looked at him and I thought, now how the heck can I explain this to him? I could say, well, it's about the geometry of the universe. It's the geometry of thought. It's the geometry of crystals. It's the geometry that makes electrons go. It's about, and I could say it's about a tetrahedron, and he would have no idea none of it would he have an understanding what I'm talking about. So I guess I'm confused and being distracted with my dance thing and my family event, and then I've had to jump through freaking hoops to get this call coordinated through my car. I'm really just more confused than anything. Delighted to be here. I hope I don't distract, and I'm delighted to hear what's been shared so far. And I'm going to turn it back over to you, Joe.
Yeah, no, you know, and we hope not to distract you. I mean, that's more the important of the two. So from that, you know, from that perspective, so why don't we go ahead and start where, let me just pull up the page here. Yeah, I have planes and symmetry. There you go. And I remember reading across that. Then we went back to figure 8 point, is that 8 point? Hang on, I can't see. Figure 8. I don't know if there's a point there or not. I can't say. 44, the hexagonal on the left and the cubic on the right, which is on page. My pages aren't going to sync up with everyone else's. 120 because I have the Kindle version. So anyway, would everybody like to be okay with starting with the planes of symmetry?
Which chapter is that?
It's the same chapter that we were
Post
on.
packing.
Yeah, and 8, it's like basically it's like section 8.
Right.
Page 121.
It is 120. Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
so yeah, that's exactly where I am.
Can anybody share their screen?
Yeah, I'm about to do that right now. Now, here's the problem. Can you guys see that?
Not yet.
Yes.
Can you see it, Richard?
No.
I can see it, but it's sharing 2 pages simultaneously, and it is quite small.
Okay. Hang on.
Well, my computer is spinning right now and I'm frozen, so that may be the problem for me.
Well, we're hearing you.
Comes.
Hang on, let me do this real quick.
If you had a one-page view.
Yeah, I'm going to that now. So it's not a PDF.
It's okay. If it's a one-page view, it'll be easier to read than the 2-page view. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hang on, I had it there. I'm having a little bit of a couple of issues with pulling up the single page view on my Kindle. I don't know why. There, that should help. There we go. All right. I'm still going to have a little bit.
Now I see it well, and it's I have my book open to that page as well.
Is it big enough for everybody to see?
Yeah.
I can see
Yes,
the
for me.
drawings.
You can. This. I mean, this is a single page actually. Yeah. Are you good with that, Steve? Or
What's that?
are you good with that? The way it's being presented? I mean,
I can't.
Okay.
I can see the drawings, but I can't see the words.
Okay.
I mean, I can see the word, but it's way too small to read.
Really? Okay. It's probably because you're on the phone. So, do you guys? All right. So we'll start there. I can start reading. We can rotate from there. The following observations pertain to an indefinite. So these are planes of symmetry. Now I do feel like we read this last week, but it doesn't hurt to go back over them.
Are you starting on the bottom right-hand corner of that page?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Yep. The following observations pertain to an indefinite expanse of cubical closed packed spheres. So I have to back over. For example, imagine a room full of ping pong balls so tightly nested together that every ball touches exactly 12 others as described above. The idea of a room full of balls at first suggests such chaos that the precise organization arising out of the requirements of closest packing is truly remarkable. The array contains 7 planes of symmetry characterized by 2 different types of cross section. The first is obvious because we generated the cubic packing with successive layers of triangulated planes. However, it is not necessarily obvious that there are 4 different orientations of triangulated planes parallel to the 4 faces of the tetrahedron, and therefore to the vector equilibrium's 4 intersecting hexagons, even though we built this array by stacking triangular layers of balls in only one direction. The result incorporates parallel triangulated layers in 4 different directions. We further note that all 4 hexagons of the vector equilibrium are preserved in cubic packing, whereas in hexagonal packing, hexagons are formed in only one orientation, the horizontal plane. Kind of covering what we did a little bit last week. Does anybody have any comments or want to maybe build off of what we discussed last? Hey, it's me. No.
Well, off of last week and what is figure 8.5, I had some really interesting discoveries for me in this showing, understanding how I went from the hexagonal over to the cubical in terms of flipping or turning the top triangle. And then I did some more work on the hexagon or the cubical, and I saw how the square sides of the cube actually are connected to each of the 4 the triangles of the in that structure, and how they fold out and then fold together and you get a cube. So I finally got it in my head.
All right. Yeah. I mean, for me, the breakthrough was actually just again, hey, Manu, how are you doing? Do you want to do a quick check-in? How are you feeling?
I'm feeling good. I woke up now. and I'm happy to join the meeting here. I'm still trying to fix my screen here. I don't know what is happening. I want to expand it.
We're happy to have you here. Can you see the screen?
Yeah, I can see just myself, but it's very reduced. I can see Richard, I can see you, Joe, I can see Anne, and then there's Steve's picture. But I'm going to fix it. Just continue.
Okay. So I will pick up where we just left off, and then we can kind of rotate from there. Secondly, there are three distinct planes characterized by square pattern spheres. This discovery seems to contradict our expectations, for we have learned that squares are not close packed. However, the emergence of three mutually perpendicular square patterns is inescapable byproduct. I'm sorry. What's that? Yeah. Is that? Do you say something, Ian, or?
Boom.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Oh, sorry. Byproduct of nesting triangular layers. The square planes correspond to the vector equilibrium square faces, which consist of three mutually perpendicular pairs of parallel faces, just like the faces of a cube. In a space-filling array of close-packed spheres, these seven planes extend indefinitely, with neither curve nor bend. A cross-section of such a packing has a square or triangular arrangement, depending on which way the packing is sliced. So although we started with only triangulated layers in order to create a maximally dense array of spheres, square cross sections automatically arose, just as octahedral cavities automatically arose next to the radiating tetrahedra in the vector equilibrium. That's a lot. This is the shape of space, which is interesting. You know, again, I think what we're really kind of in this whole section is actually really and Richard, you actually brought this up. It's basically the utilization of space, and how to maximize the utilization of space, which is actually, you know, in a way, if you're, you know, kind of, you're able to, again, the cookie platter was actually a very good example, where you had the 13 versus the 12 cookies, I believe, and just showing how you can actually, you know, how the packing actually works, but then you can start to understand things through the vector equilibrium from there. Because you start to understand the principles that kind of that are kind of governing the system, if you understand how to maximize the use of space. So go ahead, Manu.
Yes, I am always kind of surprised when people say they want to simplify and explain fuller, and they go more complicated. This book was supposed to be a fuller explanation. Okay, explanation is different from simplifying. But still, I'm satisfied with understanding two basic things, or three. The first is, in the beginning, there is the IVE. The second is, if you want to structure, there's got to be an impulse.
Mm.
The third is, in the structure, the minimum is a tetrahedron. And if everything was continuous and is in the structure, it means it can be packed back into a tetrahedron, which is the original point. But now, let's see that tetrahedron original, how we can then divide it to understanding, how the intricacies of the packing, the closest can be. The first is a very simple thing. First order division. If you give a baby a rope and you're asking to fold that into two, I'm not a baby, but a 5-year-old. What would a 5-year-old do? If I gave him a rope like this one, okay. If I gave him a rope, like this is a cable, this is a cable, and I gave anybody who hasn't done anything in life, I say, I want 2 of these. What does the person do? What is the most natural way to do it? To cut it into
they're going to put an ends to it.
Yeah, no, they're going to put it into 2 equal parts. That's the most natural. That's what comes naturally to everybody. A monkey does it.
That's a good point.
Yeah. So if I have a tetrahedron that have 6 segments as edges, what will a baby do? The baby will take each of those segments and divide by 2. Equal parts.
Yeah.
That's called a first-degree derivation. From doing that exercise, what derives? What derives is 4 tetrahedra. We did this exercise so many times. It's 4 tetrahedra and 1 implied octahedron. Basic. Just 1 derivation. Right?
Yeah.
Let me say something about what I've kind of just discovered recently in some of our discussions around tensegrity. And tensegrity very often is assumed to start with compression, and then you put tension connections to, one compression point to another compression point. And what I started to realize was the possibility that you start with the tension and go to the compression, and you using the illustration of a rope or a chain, just like you did, that comes across to me as starting with tension.
Richard, again, you are complicating fact. I was onto something. Because there is it's chicken and egg situation.
No, I know you were onto something. I'm just saying I'm bouncing off of it because it helped me be onto something as well.
Okay. All right. So we saw that anybody taking that tetrahedron and trying to section it into 2 will arrive with 4 tetrahedra and 1 implied octahedron, which you didn't see before. Okay, interpretation of it, I can go further, but that's the first part. The second part of it is that all I need to understand everything that is in is to look at that octahedron that was hiding there and say, hey, who are you? How can I understand you? I go again and I cut it into 2. Now, by cutting it into 2, remember, we went from 6 to 4. Now we cut in 3, 4, 3. By the 3 planes, the 3 great circles, 1, 2, and 3. And that is it. Once you do that, you have now of the original tetrahedron, 12 parts that are equal, that are regular. If you go further, you start having parts that are no more regular. You start having right angles, isosceles, which are not equilaterals. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah. I mean,
So, I'm saying if you go dividing again after having divided into 12 parts by first doing the first integration, that was 4 parts plus the octahedron, and then cutting through that octahedron 3-way, if you do a third, you start having things that are no more complete things. Let me put it. You're going to start now having things like quarks in physics you interpret it, which is just a phase of something.
did you say what you just did you say quarks?
Quarks, yes. I'm saying if you go further than the 3rd degree derivation, that's the 2nd degree derivation, you go to the 3rd degree derivation, you no more have tetrahedra, you have things that are unstable, which are phases of things. Just a phase, no more an entire thing. It is a shade of something.
Well, that goes to your second point with the idea of what structure is.
Yes.
Right?
So the point is that to understand the physical stuff, you just need 2 derivations. That's why you need velocity and acceleration. That's all. Velocity is the 1st degree derivation. Acceleration, the 2nd degree derivation. Right?
I don't know.
Everything is that. Velocity, acceleration. This is the farthest we can go in terms of dividing what was whole. What is always a whole, and it's always in tensegrity. What we are doing is that we are in that tensegrity, and then we're trying to, it's like a baby in a womb, and a baby from the womb trying to cut the mummy into pieces, the uterus, to understand who the mummy is. He's still in the womb. That was my explanation. And to me, and that's my ambition in life, I mean, one of my ambitions, is actually to write the treatise of Bucky. That's as simple as that. That will make Bucky say, those were his ideas. Bucky used to say, can you feel the acceleration of Earth? You heard that story, right?
Yeah, I did actually.
The story where Bucky is with a friend, and Bucky is telling a friend, don't you feel this? Don't you feel how the Earth is tilting? And the friend say, I feel nothing. Nothing. But that's it. That was now the Bucky, his imagination, his radiative part has gone and come back to him to make a whole. There it was different. It was like an icosahedron compared to his friend who was just a tetrahedron. His friend was...
There's another side to that story.
Yeah.
I think, anyway, I mean, if you say, can you feel the motion, and the friend says, no, I can't feel anything. Then what I also learned from Bucky was to say, in order to feel the motion, but also to feel the motion in the right way, is to stand facing west in the evening with the sunset, but only stand there and feel that you're traveling 1,100 miles an hour away from the horizon, and see if you can then feel you moving on the surface of the earth.
Yes.
And in the same way, in the morning, stand facing east, will see the sun, and see if you can feel that you're moving so that the surface of the earth is now revealing the sun The sun is not moving. It's revealing the sun, and there you have a beautiful sunset in the morning.
Yes.
And I've tried that a few times, and you actually can feel the movement as the sun in the evening, as the sun disappears.
Yes.
I have the sensation of moving away from the horizon, and that's why the sun is disappearing in my eyes.
At that stage,
that
Richard, who are you? You are an icosahedron.
Yeah.
No,
Okay.
it's true.
Yeah.
You are expanded to feel the small toe. Your consciousness of universe has been expanded so much that you can feel the sensation, the pulsation of that universe. Somebody who's cultured, let's just say, put it to the extreme, is packed like this. He cannot feel it. That was my point.
Yeah, no, that's, I mean, again, what you seem to be, what you're saying is that once you feel the sensation, and I use my example of how you can do it, then you come in and say, and do you understand the structure of you? And you're saying partly why you can feel that sensation is because you're octahedral.
Yes.
Good. Yeah. Thank you.
You have fed, you fed. And that's, to me, that's what we call consciousness. Because nature has always been there. But our consciousness, our consciousness of universe is our structuring of it.
I'd call it awareness.
Yes.
Well,
Okay.
I mean, that's the first thing came to mind that when you were dividing things by, into two. Right?
Oh, that's very helpful. Thank you.
I mean, but the idea of unity is plural at minimum two. And that's a thought that had come to mind. But I actually am very interested in this relation. I mean, thinking of it differently, when you talked about structure and impulse, and then how that relates to acceleration and velocity is actually really interesting as well. And I have to
sorry to disrupt the reading, but I really think that at the level we've been working on this thing for 15, 20 years. Each of us. I mean, the cumulative experience of studying Bucky here is humongous.
Yeah.
We should be going beyond just the text.
Oh, I agree with that.
And start being creative. We should go further than Becky. Because Becky spoke, he was alone. People didn't understand it. The only guy who understood Becky, but he couldn't even explain why, was Einstein. You know the story, where he takes his stuff. Einstein. Becky takes his papers because he was talking about idiots, his ideas, and people were taking him for a fool. And Becky now takes his papers and meet Mr. Einstein in the just before Einstein died, not long before Einstein died, in New York. And they give Einstein his papers, and Einstein go study them, read them, and come back to him. He say, "I find no fault."
Do you know why that happened in the first place?
No.
It's because he wrote that chapter to go into his book, and the publisher said, you can't put in that chapter. And his question was, why can't I put that in my book? Well, you can't because you're not an authorized person to understand or interpret Einstein.
What?
And then Einstein ended up getting a copy of that. He sent him a copy. And then Einstein, as you said, was in New York, and he invited Bucky to come over, I think, from Philadelphia. And they had tea or coffee, and he went over the chapter with him and said, you have a layman's understanding of this that I didn't think was possible.
Interesting. So what chapter was that?
I can't
That's the
remember.
nine chains to the moon, I think.
That's interesting.
Now, the other part of that story.
And you see Becky's geometry. It never goes beyond the second degree. I challenge you to find me where Becky goes into complicated mathematics of, third degree derivation.
No, I mean,
I look at his book, look at his work, and bring it to me. I haven't yet seen it.
No,
Because Becky declares somewhere, mathematics is too complicated. He thinks that if the right assumptions were made, mathematics will be all rational. Does he not say it? And that irrational numbers wouldn't exist.
Mm-hmm.
Because nature is rational. Nature is always acting in the most economic way. He writes it many, many times.
Which brings you into the question of, and so why is the golden rule an irrational number?
It is a rational number because it is. We don't touch it, but it is a conversion of a series of rational numbers.
Yeah, I want to come back really quickly, and I think this is important, that what Richard stated is the idea that what Einstein had actually stated is that you have a layman's understanding of Einstein's theories and concepts, and followed up by Manu saying, essentially that how Bucky's able to actually simplify these concepts and essentially, only, in two, just basically going into two different, well, I forget the exact word you used, and it's not coming to me, but basically two deviations.
Yeah. But most people would laugh at the idea that Bucky has a layman's understanding, as if, that's supposed to translate over to me that I'm the layman that now understands Bucky.
Well, I mean, but the important thing is the idea is that the educational aspect of it. Okay, take care, Ian. But the educational aspect of it is that what he's able to do is, because if you really understand something, you can state it simply. And also the idea that if you're able to state these things simply, then you're able to essentially educate people as to the concepts themselves, which means they can then start to understand the fundamental principles of the universe. And if you can understand the fundamental principles of the universe, then you can, obviously, a lot is possible from there to reimagine things. But that's a really important point, because we just spent about, I don't know, 10 minutes in the first part of the call, maybe 15 minutes, talking about specifically education and and Anne's endeavors with this, and I think that that's where, again, I was talking about it, the ability to spot patterns. Bucky makes that accessible. So,
yeah. Well, this is, I think it'd be interesting in what you think, Manu, but when we keep saying that nature is basically tetrahedral,
right,
and then when we use language like we are now in terms of getting things into kind of simple understanding, And I'm now moving away from the language of simple to the
simplex.
language of simplex. And that the tetrahedron, if it is the basic sort of configuration, then the tetrahedron is not simple, it's simplex. It's the minimum complexity. And then as we go out further and further, you get into what is going to be complexity. And in some ways, complexity now kind of relates to CJ's and Fuller's language of comprehensiveness. And so complexity is really comprehensiveness, or comprehensive exity. We could play around with another word, but all of a sudden it's coming clearer to me that the tetrahedron is a simplex. Then as we move towards comprehensivity, we're moving further into complexity. Does that make sense? Is that?
Well, I mean, I mean,
Yeah, it is.
Comprehensivity is you're not looking at things in a fractured way. So yeah, you're looking at the whole, and that's essentially what you're talking about. Is you're going from the simple to complex.
You're trying to look at the whole.
Yeah,
The story is this one. The story comprehensivity.
But the other thing too,
the comprehensivity, yes, yeah.
Yeah, but if again, it's coming into my mind from the discussion we had last week around the hexagonal and the cubical, and whether we can see the squares and the triangles, and then the squares adjacent to each other. And I think what we were just discussing this evening or today is that and I think that's what Amy is saying in the chapter section we just read about. We started out thinking everything was triangular, but then we discovered that there is a square or cubic, and so that the shape of space is not one or the other; it's both. Right. It's triangular and square, or tetrahedral and cubical.
Correct.
And so it also moves us away from the either or. Well, is it all triangles or is it all squares?
Right.
Let us be clear about something. And this goes to Richard's simplexity. Remember that when we're talking about a tetrahedron, always remember that it is this.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about the four bonded edge tetrahedron in order to be comprehensive. When you take Berkeley's how does he call it? How does he call it? The folding in. Richard, what is it?
Oh,
the vector equilibrium or the jitterbug?
No. Berkeley's artifact. What's it? Wasn't it?
The jitter.
The jitterbug, yes.
Yeah.
When you take the jitterbug and then you collapse it, finally, where does it go? You have a tetrahedron of four edges.
Right.
Each bond is four bonded. Each edge is four bonded. You get me?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
So yes. So when we always talking about a tetrahedron, we should remember that we're talking in actual fact about two tetrahedra that are collapsed into a diamond. Let me repeat it.
And that's where the unity is plural.
Yes.
Too.
When you stylize, if you take a tetrahedron, somebody might say, oh, there's one edge. But whenever you talk about tetrahedron, think about the diamond. Always. And this is a diamond structure. All right? This is a diamond structure here with the octa. It's two tetrahedra that fuse precessively, like that. It gives a diamond. What's here? If it continues, you have diamonds. All right?
Yeah. But
Okay.
what you've done,
So
what you've done for me, in that respect, is that if I say a tetrahedron, a single tetrahedron is simplex, and you're saying that there are always two, then the basic, if you want, is always complex, because you've got two together. If you
yes,
take them apart, you've got two simplexes that come together into one, maybe basic complex.
yes. And the concept,
Right.
the concept of tetrahedron should always be understood in that context.
Yeah.
Always.
That's really interesting how you
Because
just,
this is, look at this to the tetrahedron concept is the same as the icosahedron to the vector equilibrium. Is the last step to get to that point where the wave changes phase. Do you understand what I'm saying?
yeah.
When you are expanding, the last stable form is the icosahedron, right? The bigger, the one of volume 20 point something, but it's 20 tetrahedra, the volume of the icosahedron.
Right.
Or of the rhombic dodecahedron, the same volume. It's 20 when you look at the table of volumes. That is the most expanded universe stable. Beyond that, you go to the vector equilibrium. That is just an impulse. The vector equilibrium reaches and then changes, and then start contracting. The vector equilibrium is the most expanded phase of universe, where everything then changes from expansion to compression. Does it make sense? That's why it is not stable. It changes. It just reaches it. By the time you realize that it reaches it, it's changed. It's like what I was calling the quarks. You don't see the quarks because it's just a phase on an electron. You can feel the effect, but you don't see it.
That's really, really good.
In order to
this then to the minimum size, that is the tetrahedron, is this first derivation of it that is stable. That is the octahedron inside, what we call basically the Star of David. This is called, depending on perception, in many, many cultures. It exists in many, 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 many cultures. It's called different things. You get me?
Yeah.
So that is the
what's it
last
called?
phase. This is the Star of David, depending on how you see it. This is the Star of David.
Well, yeah, it's also the Seal of Solomon.
Yes.
There's also a Christian cross
yes.
there. There's also the
in Africa,
Buddhist,
in the Bantu culture,
swastika.
yeah, it can be a swastika. Many people have made it a symbol of many things, right? But it's the last. Yeah. It is the last, most expanded, stable form of universe. The last before you hit the vector equilibrium, that is not stable. Conversely, in compression, this is the last before you reach the four bonded original tetrahedron, the most compressed form of universe. Because when you take the jitterbox and you compress it, when you arrive at the tetrahedron, you look like each edge is 4 bonds. It's 4 sticks.
Yeah.
So you have 24 sticks. Those 24 here are compressed and packed minimally. So we should never talk about a tetrahedron implying a simple thing like this. No, this is misleading. A tetrahedron, in its definition as the most compressed representation of universe, should be talked as if this guy here that I'm turning were 4. This guy 4, this guy 4, this guy 4. 4 times 6 is 24. Is the same as 2 spheres that you put side by side. If you have 2 balls like this. See, the white and the red is the same.
Mm-hmm.
The representation of the same thing.
Interesting.
Okay. With that kind of make things a lot easier to understand. Because otherwise you get into things, mathematics, and we're not here to do math for the sake of math. We're here to understand universe and nature, how it operates, in order for us to replicate it, hoping to create fractals, locally. So we want to live in the best way, like billionaires,
Right.
but in harmony with nature.
Well, that's what actually you just demonstrated.
That's
The two
the
spheres
objective.
actually. The 2 spheres are harmony,
Yes.
essentially. And you just
We want to find our partner. We've lost our partner,
yeah.
our dance partner. Each of us has lost his dance partner. And our job is to find it. That's why we know that everything is related to everything. But we wander too far away from the origin. So we need to retrace to find where our partner is. And that's life.
That's really good.
Well lived, yes. And the comprehensivity. And the comprehensivity that Joe talked about, yeah. I was saying the comprehensivity that Joe talked about is how we imagine the technique, the practical steps that we must take in order to try to achieve that. That is like keeping a memory. We are divide, but what are the steps? We memorize them. And then we're going to have a processing thing that look at it. We trace the paths, the different paths, and that processing will help us design the most effective, which is supposed to be what nature does, by assumption. I'm through, Richard, sorry.
Well, I want us to pursue if you want, the makeup of comprehensivity, in the way in which I think Bucky talks about it and the way in which CJ talks about it. And what I understand now, what makes up comprehensivity is a combination of generalism and specialization. It's a mixture. And so when Bucky says there's too much specialization, he's not arguing to get rid of it. No. He's arguing to find the dynamics of the specialist with the generalist.
Right.
And that's why, in some ways, I always love his story that he says, in a comprehensive sort of system, culture, and you're talking about armies, let's say, who's the head of the army? What's their title? What's their, and he will always answer it. He did always answer it as saying the head of an army is called a general.
Yes.
And the general is the generalist within the comprehensivity, and he or she works with the specialists to do what they're supposed to do in order to move the troops or whatever it is forward. And so it's the generalist who, in some respects, is the boss, and the specialists are the followers. They're the foot soldiers. And that's what we don't understand all that well. We keep thinking that the specialist is the boss, and the specialist should be the commander of the forces. Not true, according to Bucky. But you can't have one without the other either. You have to have generalists and you have to have specialists.
Yeah.
One application of it in the corporate world is cooperation in which they give. I mean, you have people who are like CEOs, CEO of divisions and things like that, right? But you have the technicians. They have say, if you take Schlumberger, for example, I'm taking the oil industry. There used to be administrative, but Schlumberger will create a position of general field engineers, who are the guys actually who are running the tools in the field, making the measurements, and making sure that Schlumberger's business is actually run, which is basically acquiring data on the field during operation for oil companies. And those two were compensated. You wouldn't have more authority or whatever, primacy over a technical guy who's a general field engineer. You could be a general manager of corporation, but you are. Another stuff that I see is pilots and administrative in airlines. The best airlines empower the pilot, seriously, and give them the same, if not better dignity than the office staff.
Yeah. No, I mean,
Yeah, well, that's the whole point. The generalist, the CEO, knows how to empower the best parts of whatever his system is.
right.
And it's just like I've had a story of what happened during the Iraqi war, and what the generals were doing was empowering the tank commanders or the tank drivers to make decisions on the spot out in the field. And that was very different than an old style sort of military where all the commands have to come from the top. But the generalist then is still sees the comprehensive sort of map and knows when to empower himself or empower others.
I have this story. I don't know if Joe will not remember. It's too young. There used to be a cartoon. You remember in the world of cartoons when we were young, our smartphone was a cartoon, right? The cartoon book. And there was this organization that had a face. It had a tower, like in Chicago. I don't know where it was. It was in the US anyway, where is a tower that is multi-story with the boss sitting on the top. And there was a janitor at the bottom. But the real organization was hidden behind that. It was a criminal organization. And the boss, the real boss, was the janitor. And he sat at the entrance, being a janitor, because he knew all the in and goings of the corporation, who came in and who went out. And it was a whole. I mean, I don't know if if you remember that, Richard or Steve. It was a cartoon. I used to receive it monthly. And it was very funny.
I
Right?
don't remember the name, no.
Yeah. So in this is a typical example of an effective organization which has a formal, let's say, the phase, the day phase is that building with the CEO at the top of a company that is on the New York Stock Exchange traded. At night, it operates, and it operates reversed with the CEO of the night operation, the janitor. Because he sat there the whole day, gathered all the information in direct operations at night.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And the
That's
two
right.
coexisted. And it was very successful cooperation. Right? It's not the example to give to young people, but that is an example of what life is. Always minimum of two phases. One overt, one covert. And the difficulty that we're always having is to uncover what is covered. Or to imagine. We have to imagine what is covered in order to understand how the overts operate.
Mm. Well, I mean, I have to say, actually, just even walking through the way we just did, you know, to kind of just unpack the whole idea of comprehensivity to, you know, as Richard had pointed out, the simplicity to complexity, and how we did that essentially, you know, by looking at the tetrahedron and dissecting it, and to dissecting it, and so that we understand how two spheres come together in that way, in a harmonious relationship. I mean, you're really, it goes back to what we were doing last week. We actually dissected you know, the hexagonal shapes as well as the cubic. And so and by dissecting them, we actually understood how they actually functioned, and how they actually function together in a way. So yeah, no, I mean, I think in coming back to what you were actually saying in a very practical way, it's not either or when you're talking about it from an organizational standpoint. You know, there's whatever you want to call a leader, and you know, the specialist, as Richard was saying, micro and macro. They're both on the same, both on the level, and because they work harmoniously together. And when you know, sometimes the worst situations that I've seen personally is where specialists are thrust into a situation where they're forced to be a leader, and they're actually pulled away from what they actually like to do and what they do well. And so because then, you know, they're kind of forced into a different position than they're actually, you know, kind of used to dealing with. But and actually there's a whole area at Deloitte that I actually was impressed with, where they would actually, you know, the specialists could achieve the same status and salary level as, let's just say, a partner, because they knew that they were equally important. So anyway, I think we just, the way we unpacked that was pretty interesting. Steve, are you about ready? You're muted.
About ready for what?
Takeaways?
Oh, for takeaways, whatever. Yeah. I've been listening best I can. I'll go ahead and start and then you can end up. So I've been listening. Well, I wish I understood this better. There are parts I thought I really understood and parts I didn't. I'm going to go back and listen to this call to get some things going. I've been just thinking about the shape of space, which is kind of what this is about. And from Amy Edmondson's point of view, and I've been thinking about Planck units and how current philosophies, sciences of quantum mechanics and astrophysics break down at a certain level. They don't measure anything lower than, I think it's 10 to the minus 43 or something, and they don't measure anything more than 10 to the plus 43, something like that, 41, 42, 43. And there are these limits. And I was thinking about, this is unrelated, but well, I'll just say it. I was thinking about the Everett Fox translation of the five books of the Pentateuch, the five books of the Old Testament. And in Hebrew, when God is speaking to Moses, and Moses says to God, "Hu Hashem sent me," the normal transcription is, "I am sent me." But in the Hebrew, it is, "I will be where I will be." That's why in the Hebrew, that's what I will be where I will be. And so I'm wondering how this all fits in, all of these parts. And so I at least pondering, leaving with some good thoughts. I'm sure grateful for everybody's input, Richard and Manu and you and Anne for her few minutes while she was here. So Richard, how are you feeling? What are your takeaways?
Well, I started off feeling quite good because of previous experiences in this trim tab session this morning, and so I go away with the same feeling and maybe sort of topped up a little bit, because this has also been very helpful in terms of kind of understanding comprehensivity in terms of for me, the generalist and the specialist parts. Also understanding what we talked about last week, which was really a kind of a tough goal in some respects, but to really get into my head an understanding of how the hexagonal moves to the cubical and how it's a difference between the way in which the squares and the triangles align with each other, and you end up with I think what Fuller was, or not Fuller, Amy was saying in what we read today is that the shape of space is a mixture of triangular and cubical, or triangular and square, or tetrahedral and cubical. So I go away with that integration as well, and I always like the discussions that we have that that speak to the common language of simplicity and complexity, and that we've been starting to move it in the direction of simplexity and complexity. And for what Manu was demonstrating with the tetrahedron, and in my mind saying, all by itself, it's minimum complexity. But when you have it together, the way he's illustrated it, then it's by nature complex. And we have to understand it in that complexity. And we only use simplexity or simplicity in order to separate enough to sort of see things and then have them back together. And so I'm always reminded that when we're using models and that sort of thing, models are like maps. They're they're important for us to see integration, and they're also important to see separation, but they're not. It's like the map is not the territory. And so we also have to be careful that modeling doesn't turn into what we think is the territory or the reality. And these kinds of dialogues always keep me reminded of that. And I don't fall into, or try not to follow into, too much of a simple, if you want, awareness or understanding. So thank you. That's my takeaway. Manu, how are you feeling? What's your takeaway?
I'm feeling good. I'm happy to see Steve. I thought he was away, but it's nice to have him here. Okay. I just feel, in continuation to what Richard said, is that we divide to understand. And it's not advised to divide more than twice. You lose sense. Don't divide more than twice, because if you divide twice, you already have the maximum you can have in terms of understanding what's going on. And this leads me to something that I put there, the tetra word. It used to be a big thing when we're meeting with Steve, with Kelly, to try to put 4 words in a tetrahedral form that are linked, and that makes a sense in terms of packet of energy that you want to convey. We're trying to define the direction of vector and the magnitude of that vector in terms of operations, in terms of information. And my tetra word of today is location, distance from, velocity of motion, and acceleration of motion of anything, of a thing. Right? The first two, location and distance from, is what Bucky would call awareness. Awareness of the otherness. The second one, velocity and acceleration, is consciousness. So there is the tetra word. That means something. And it means a whole in physics. It's been the whole holy grail and the whole quest of physics, to understand how nature originated, location. How is it? Is it expanding? Is it contracting? Distance from that origin? And then, is velocity? How fast is it doing it? And is that velocity changing? Acceleration. Notice that the definition of velocity and acceleration is with regard to a variable that we invented. It's not a variable that is real. Let me repeat it. That variable is time. We invented time. Time does not naturally exist. It's only our perception of things that create time. Time is a derivative of the basic reality. In that is derived from lack of information, of our apprehension of information that is already past. So you see again that the notion of velocity and acceleration are constructs of our structuring of nature. Right? Time is just a cycle. In other words, people from another planet will have a different time, but they're in the same universe as we are. Okay. And then to last, to say that things are never simple. Things are never simple. And I adopt the word of Richard, simplexity. We should ban simple from our language. We should say the simplicity of this or the complexity of this, but not simple. This is simple because it's not. There's always a hidden face. And it's ubiquitous in that if you derive a tetrahedron, you see hiding an octahedron. In my example of a tower of a company, you have the day face trading on New York Stock Exchange. That is the company. What are they dealing behind Microsoft? What did the CEO of Microsoft, what deal did he make in secret with some other CEO that is going to affect what I see of Microsoft? But that I don't know. But my life, the information that I have on Microsoft is the information that come out of New York Stock Exchange, that the report that Microsoft does. And those reports are always things of a person. It's never things, they are conjecture forward. But the report, the quarterly report in the US of corporations is about the quarter past. It's never about the quarter future.
Mm-hmm.
So it's lagging, I'm lagging. So there is something that I don't know. There is what I see, but there is something that I don't see that is not completely cut, but sometimes overlap. It overlaps, and it overlapping in an intersection with something else that has nothing to do with what I see. But which interaction of that hidden part and something else is going to affect me in what I see? That's the simplicity of business. So when we understand that, we can go about Joe's comprehensivity with less fear. False evidence appearing real. So that's my takeaway. Otherwise, I'm grateful. Who's left? Is Richard? Richard, how do you feel? What do you take away?
Right.
It's Joe.
Me.
Joe, how do you feel? What do you take away?
I mean, I think what you just shared, I know is something that I have to go back and listen to it because I think that it's actually so deep on so many levels that it would be really, I mean, what you just captured, just even how we experience time and how we understand reality. And that directly relates to even this idea of flow states. And you just explained it in a way that was, when you related it to location and distance, that was incredibly powerful, actually. So that is something I'm very appreciative of. That's really helps me because ultimately, one of the most important things in spotting patterns and learning Bucky is understanding change as well. And how things change and the rates of change. And so you just captured that really, really well with the location distance and the velocity and the acceleration of, you know, of a thing. So, you know, that's one thing I have to go back and look. You know, you know, I very much appreciated what Richard brought in the simplexity and complexity, and kind of brought that together with comprehensivity, and I thought, and relating it to not an either or with the specialists or the generalists, if you will, that you know, how these two work in unison with one another. And it was just a different way of kind of expressing that. But I think it was a really important way, going from the simplex to the what would be the complex, and how that encompasses the whole. But then again, also how that relates to the real world. The I mean, there's a couple of things I've written down that you know, that just random things that I need to follow up with. But no, I'm very grateful for all these insights today. I also like, really quickly, is Manu's example, just a string that was cut, and how actually, if you cut it, that you naturally cut it in equal distance, and then how that actually starts to divide things into how we understand structures in reality. Because you said, you know, it's natural to cut it like essentially these equal distance, like you go to the middle, and how this is actually a way of thinking about things in terms of in nature, how our natural, how we look at things naturally. And sometimes we make things a little too complex. And then, yeah, I mean, and just returning to the idea of the triangle and the square. And so I think that was, again, that was a really, that was a interesting breakthrough for me last week as well. The hexagonal packing and the twist and the cubic packing, and some of the very practical examples of how those two are, the interplay between those two. So yeah, no, so that I have a lot, you know, that I took away from this evening. And it's only 3 minutes after the hour, so close.
What is the dancing partner of a triangle?
What's that?
Which is the dancing partner of a triangle? That's the quiz.
What is it? The density?
The dancing partner.
The
dual of a
dancing
triangle.
pattern.
What,
The
yes,
dancing
what is the
pattern.
dual? What is the dual of a triangle?
You're talking about the Star of David there, or?
I'm just asking, what is the dual of a triangle?
Well, to some extent, what we've been talking about, the dancing partner has to be a square.
But what will the natural guide say? He says another triangle. Another triangle locked the thing is dead. It's a crystal.
I see.
It has to be the square. The square we never gave it the importance it had in nature. Because it's wacky like this, it does things, it allows motion. It allows matter to twist and to go around, to move. The square actually allows the flow of energy.
Well, and that's very
And
much
the triangle holds the energy that flows. You need a holder and a carrier. Holder and carrier. You see, you have the rail, the railroad, and the wagon. That's another example. You can come out with thousands of those.
Well, the dance partner needs a leader and a follower. The triangle.
Well, it depends, Richard. There you are putting hierarchy. It is.
Well, wait a minute. You know, I got to be honest, guys. If you really want to break it down, then you have the square, you have the triangle, but what else are you missing?
Huh?
You're missing something.
What's that?
The circle.
No, a circle doesn't exist.
Yeah, it does.
It doesn't.
That's the Philosopher's Stone. I'm telling you that if you look at the Philosopher's Stone, there's the circle, there's a square,
Yeah.
there's a
If
triangle.
we're talking about dancing
a circle.
partners, and there's only two.
Yeah, but then you're talking about who's observing it.
Joe, the circle doesn't exist. We just said that. This thing doesn't exist. It's an illusion.
The circle is the observer.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly right.
Yes.
That's what I'm saying. So, but if you
The
look
circle is in certain way is a IVM.
right.
Yeah.
So, but that's you're exactly right, the observer.
Yeah.
And then you have
But practically in our language, I
you have the
think
macro
that's
and the
where
micro.
that's the application. That's one of the changes that should emanate from somebody who studied Bucky. Because that's what Bucky was the ability to take the concept there and bring it practically. Because he used to build artifacts. That was his method of proving things. If you say, I have an idea, and he always says in a teleological design and anticipatory design, say, you have an idea, the best way to demonstrate it is to build an artifact that works according to the principle of those things. Then you have demonstrated it. I remember one class, it was, I can't remember, but it was math. And lecturers asked the question, how do you demonstrate that there is a cat in a bush? You can do many things. You can say there's a meow. You can say you saw some fur from the skin of a cat. You can say many, many things. It's a long way. The best way, or one of the ways, is just to catch the stuff. Right? And then this is a cat. Puff, that's a cat. And we should learn to practically start coming back to the source of the whole thing. Because the analytical thing has taken us too far from the origin to even feel it. It's taken us beyond our sensations.
Mm-hmm.
We should come back to the heat of a source and try to understand it simpler. That's what it is. There are so many examples. And that coming back is a decision that we have to make. We can decide to continue wandering all around, going different directions, and becoming a word of, how will I call it? Non-predictable. Things just happen.
or we can choose the hard way, coming up the rough side of a mountain. And the poetry of, I don't know, who was it? He say, I come where the road divided, and I chose the high road.
Traveled.
Yes,
yeah,
it made the whole difference.
made all the difference.
Yes. Poets understand maths in a way that is far beyond what people who call themselves mathematicians actually understand it. You need poetry to take you beyond some barrier. You need to imagine. That's what made Einstein. You know, Einstein was a musician. That was his passion. So if he weren't a physicist, if they really succeeded into blocking him at the Zurich Polytechnic, he would have become probably a professional musician. Was playing violin. Steve is here with all of his skills. And I'm sure his musical background has been a lot to grasp those things, to draw, to look at the intricacies, you know, how things link. It's not everybody. I mean, it is, you need to be poetic, musical in a way. I'm talking about the grand sense of it.
Harmonious.
Yes. To be able to go beyond certain barriers. To imagine, you just need to be able to sit on the back of the eagle and let the eagle soar. So that you have the view from up there, from out there, as Bucky would say.
Yeah, it's
Right?
what's that?
No, I'm fine. I'm saying I'm
No,
true.
no, you know, one of the things
It's
I'll
very
just say,
interesting. It was
one
very
of the
interesting.
things that you just said that was actually very, interesting is that it is a choice. It's a red pill or blue pill kind of situation. You know, are we going to just drift, or experience reality for kind of what it is? And it is a choice. It is a choice.
I will argue that Bucky say we are born naked and helpless. I don't know if that is true, but I just feel it. That actual fact, we are born is innate. A baby that is born has a sense.
I like that better.
Of that equality divided into two. I just think that the baby has it. Because if the baby does this, right? If it tilts on one side, it goes back to his back, naturally. Newborn babies of a day will move to their back. Right or wrong? I mean, you guys have more experience than I have. Steve? Richard? I say a newborn baby, if he's on his side like this, he will come back naturally to his back. The baby they don't naturally lie on the bed, newborn on the side. They learn to lie on the side. They always lie like this. Their back on the bed. Am I wrong? I just feel it. If so,
I don't know for sure.
Yeah, but if so, it will mean that we are born with the innate sense of equality, of symmetry.
Oh, that's true.
One is equal to the other. Of that equilibrium. Yeah.
I believe that. And I do, yeah. And I believe there's a natural curiosity that we're born with as well. That gets drowned out of us. And that's what you were saying before, kind of how do you recapture that?
There's a guy called called Michael Gerber.
Michael who?
Gerber.
Oh, Michael. Yeah, sure. He wrote the
The Dreaming Room. The Dreaming Room.
and the Grifter. Did he write Grift?
Many books. I am certified by Michael Gerber. He wrote many books, and he made a whole career on what you call it, the Dreaming Room. He said, before you ever had a leader, there are 4 steps.
No, I was wrong.
You have the dreamer, you have the devil's advocate, you have a storyteller before you have a leader. So before you even start with an initial plan, in many business schools, they say that you start an idea with, they completely ignore the dream part of it.
Yeah.
They cannot structure the dream part. Michael Gerber structured the dream. And he wrote about the roles of each of all those guys. The dreamer is not necessarily the devil's advocate. Devil's advocate is the guy that will doubt your ideas. Is the guy that will say you are saying BS. But it's necessary to your dream to shape.
Mm-hmm.
And notice that those 4 that he teaches make a tetra word. Dreamer, devil's advocate, storyteller is the marketer, the seller. And then leader. The leader is the marshal. The person who is going to marshal the resources to now transmute that idea into something material.
Yeah, I like that. I like that.
And I spent 2 weeks with Michael Gerber in a room. We were a few guys, some from Australia, some from the States, some from Europe. And then at the end of it, you have what they call a certification to be a dreaming room instructor. Joe, what did you put?
No, I'm about to though.
Yeah. No, he wrote many books. Michael Gerber, I don't know. Maybe somewhere else. I have many of his books.
I put it
He
in.
wrote first, what was it?
You're muted, Steve.
He wrote the E-Myth first. I spoke on
the E-Myth, yes.
I spoke on the same platform with him at a millionaire retreat.
Yeah.
With Mark Harrelson. I was one of the speakers, and so was he.
Yeah. Gerber is like 90 today. I don't know. It will be 90. Because when he certified me about 14, 15 years ago, it was like in the late 70s.
Did you, I'm guessing, Steve, you didn't really have to work at public speaking.
I didn't have to work at public speaking?
Yeah.
The master public speaker.
I was raised a Mormon boy, and so we gave talks in Sunday school when we were little kids, and then I was in a rock and roll band.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
So nobody
had to tell you.
And I enjoyed teaching. I used to teach all sorts of classes.
Real estate,
but I also taught Sunday school.
Yes.
Taught the adult Sunday school class in our ward for 8 years in a row.
Wow.
By the way, I'm going to a session now with kids. We call it Kids Rock. Grade 1 to 3. So those are the 5 to 8 year old. I'm going to be my next from now, I'll go to church in 2 hours, and then I'll have about 2 hours, 2 to 3 hours with them. It's quite interesting.
Yeah, they are.
They are very interesting. You see a lot of things.
Very cool.
Yep. Excellent. All right, guys.
So Joe, how are you feeling? And did you give your takeaways?
Yeah.
Yes, already.
Okay, good. Then we're complete.
We're good.
Yep.
Okay, cool. I'm gonna send Manu a thing and get in touch with GMT time and get this issue resolved with all
Yeah,
of you.
GMT is an hour or 2 hours behind us.
Okay, so
Just-
what, you're in Cape Town, right?
Yes.
What
My
time?
time now is 20 past 7 in the morning.
Okay, and what time is the Wednesday meeting for you?
Is 3 p.m.
At 3 p.m. What time is this weekend meeting for you?
Like
Is
5:30.
at 5.
At 5
AM.
a.m., right?
Yes.
All right, good. I'm gonna track that and make sure I do my calculations for the next invitation so that I don't drive everybody crazy. I apologize.
No problem, Steve. It's normal. If you were faultless, you wouldn't be true, right? If
I
you
know.
were for anything that is faultless is dead.
What did you say?
Anything that is faultless is dead.
Okay,
you-
well, good. Well, I'm the opposite of death.
Yes. So it's only imperfection that allow flow of energy. Remember that.
That's right. I'm remembering it every day, several times a day.
Yeah.
Okay, are we complete?
Complete.
so.
Thank
See
you.
y'all. Bye-bye.
Stay safe,
Bye.
everybody.